This podcast is a 98 Studios production.
Today's the day, baby.
Today's the day.
Today's the day.
Today's the motherfucking day.
Today is the day.
Today's the day.
Today is the day.
Today's the day. What up, everybody? Welcome back to Today's the Day with Zack Anderson. Today's episode is going to be really fun. We got a quick one loading. I'm excited for it. Just barely met you, Mr. Raleigh Williams. I'm stoked to sit down with you.
Hey,
Local Utah guy.
Local Utah.
Never met you, which I'm surprised about until now, which I'm excited to have met you. But you've done a lot of cool things. The book. How long ago did your book come out?
2 months ago.
2 months ago. It's called The Creator's Calling.
The Creator's Call, yeah.
The Creator's Call. Haven't read it yet, so I'm actually excited to learn what's inside of it. Just heard about it from the Man Castle. And then you were actually the one, did you found and start Airborne?
Yeah, my brother and I, yeah.
Your brother and you, the trampoline
Airborne
park?
Trampoline Park, Alcatraz Escape Games, Labyrinth Reality Games, and then we had a axe throwing bar up in Salt Lake and in a couple other states.
So all the fun little like group date ideas that are popping up in Utah, that was you. And then Castle was just saying you sold one of them, multiple of them, you just sold the company?
We had 7 locations and we sold all of them in 2022. So it's been almost 3 years that we sold.
Amazing, man. Well, I'm stoked. We got plenty to dive into. Little amount of time. Let's get it cranking. I guess first and foremost, intro me to you. Like, help me understand who's Raleigh, where are you from?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I grew up in Tampa, Florida. I'm the youngest of 5 kids. Grew up in a family of lawyers. So once I realized that I wasn't going to be a professional quarterback because I'm 5'10", I was like, I'm going to be a lawyer. That's what I'm going to do. That's kind of what my family had kind of always said is the best education, no matter what you want to do. So I went to the University of Chicago Law School, which is one of the best law schools in the country. Graduated, thought I was going to do and practice law for the rest of my life. 30 days into my law firm job, I had a panic attack on my way into work. And I was like, I freaking hate this more than anything. I cannot do this for the rest of my life. It was the first moment in my life, you know, when you're in school and you're young and you're figuring things out, everything kind of comes to this natural endpoint. If you have a teacher you don't like, it ends, you go to summer vacation, whatever. So that career was the first time where I felt totally strapped into this roller coaster that I wanted to get off of, and I had no idea how to.
There's no end.
No end to it. So you just got to keep going. And so that panic attack opened me up to this idea of like, despite the fact that I just spent $300,000 to get this education, I got to do something else. I just have no earthly idea what that could possibly be. 6 months later, my brother sent me an article that was called The Unbelievably Lucrative Business of Escape Rooms. I'd never heard of an escape room before, but I was like, it has to be better than practicing law. I went and did one. It was shocking to me that people would pay to get locked in a room to then figure out how to get out. And so I was like, hell yeah, let's do this. Let's go for it. So I quit my law firm job, moved back out to Utah, started Alcatraz Escape Games with my brother. And then we got into the trampoline park business, the axe throwing business, and ran that business for 6 years. Sold it in 2022 for $26 million, all of the 7 locations that we had. And then 6 months after selling, kind of getting on this high note of like, I made it. Life's on easy street. You know, life's going to be easy from now on. My wife had a lump in her breast that she had kind of ignored for a year. Doctors had told her to not worry about it. And she was like, it just feels weird. I got to get this thing checked out. And so when she got it checked out, it came out that she had stage 3 breast cancer. So in 2022, all of 2022 was her going through cancer treatment, double mastectomy, chemotherapy, losing all of her hair, and me trying to figure out how to work while also supporting her through the cancer journey. We have 3 kids together. And so she was cleared from cancer in 2023. And then in the past 6 months, we just found out that she has cancer again. So she's stage 4 terminal cancer. And so with all of that, that's the long arc of my story where we're at today. And when she got diagnosed, at the back end of her diagnosis the first time, after selling the business, I felt like I started to write a book on how to sell a company because that's what I had done. That was my career, both professionally as a lawyer and then as an entrepreneur. That's when I made the most money. And I got like 50 pages into that book, and I was like, I this feels like my law firm job again. Like, I freaking hate this. Is the most boring shit that I could possibly think about. And like, why am I writing a book like this? And so I read this quote from this French author that said that the only book that's really worth writing, if you're going to write a book, you should write a book that scares you, the author, in the writing of it. So, like, what is something that scares you as opposed to just documenting a process that you know super well?
Yeah.
And so that made me pivot my idea. And so the idea for the book that I just wrote was I wanted to look back at my life, my wife's cancer. She has a brother who also died of brain cancer just recently in the past week. And so there were all of these moments where there were these kind of things outside of our control, the uncontrollable moments that no one likes to talk about. And what if in those moments God was pushing us to create something new and bring a new perspective into our life? And so um, the creator's call is kind of me trying to make sense of the moments of my life that I wish hadn't happened, that we tend to kind of push off to the side as, things where there's not much to learn from those moments, whether they're mistakes or, the times where um, our life was in chaos. And what does that chaos try to push us to create? What's the similarities and all that? And so that's what
That's
this book kind of
really,
explores.
really, really cool. That's awesome. Well, first and foremost, I'm sorry to hear about your wife. That's
Yeah.
tough. My stepmom just beat breast cancer a couple years back, and that was
Mhm.
like that was a crazy, and I didn't even fully understand it, but it's just a crazy, really,
Yeah.
really crazy sickness. So, prayers go out to her, and I hope the best for sure, and to you as well. And then really cool story, man. Like lots to unpack. So strange. Like what a strange. The more I sit down with people, and I've been interviewing people for a long time, not even just the podcast, but for years, it's like there is money in everything.
Yeah.
And I'm curious. I want to go kind of unpack your story a little bit, and then I want to talk about your book, and I'll watch the clock close this
You're
time. Um, like, do you agree? First question: do you agree with your family's consensus that getting a law degree will help you in anything that you go and do more than anything else you can go educate yourself on?
Not more than anything else you can go educate yourself on. I think for me, I didn't have a very clear idea of what I wanted to do. And so I think a law degree is a great foundation if you have no idea what you want to do. I I got into law because law was my dad's answer to what do I want to make my life. And I talk about finding your vocation. That word vocation, it comes from the Greek, which is vocare, to hear a call, to hear a voice is what it means. And so the word vocation means to feel uniquely suited to the work that you're doing. So vocation has very little to do with the actual work and everything to do with your feeling about the work. And so when my dad was practicing law, he felt like he was in his vocation. He did the thing that he was uniquely built to do. I tried to copy his answer in my life and said, this is my dad's answer. Maybe it's my answer too.
Yeah.
And when I got into the actual practice of law, I realized very quickly that this was not my answer. I could feel it. I could feel it very quickly. I would get this strange sense of dread every time I was going into the office. And I was trying to just push through that dread and hopefully make it work for long enough. And then the panic attack was this, like, you're not going to be able to just outrun this. Like, you got to pay attention to how much you hate this thing. And I at first I was like, maybe it's me, maybe it's just like I have this childlike mentality and this is just the adult world. This is what I have to do. Um, but the more I tried to ignore it, the more it kept coming to me as like, you have to get out of this thing. And with some context and with some perspective, this was 10 years ago, you know, I think that there was probably a subconscious part of me that knew that in 5, 6, 7 years, my wife would get cancer. And had I not sold those companies when I did, had I just ignored that and tried to push through that career that I had spent a lot of money to get, um, it would just be we would have been in a very different financial position, and I wouldn't have had the ability to dedicate the time that I ultimately did in that. So I look back at that period as like Noah feeling like a flood is coming, and he starts building his boat, and everyone's like, "What are you building a boat for, dude? Like, we're fine. It's good."
Mhm.
And then the rain comes, and then everyone has a different opinion. When I was leaving law, everyone was like, and I mean everyone, my parents, my siblings, my closest friends, everyone to a man thought that it was a horrible idea what I was doing. And in a lot of ways they were right. They weren't wrong to give me the advice to not do it. It's just when you can learn at whatever age, however many times you have to learn to put more stock in your own experience and your own intuition, even if it means conflicting with the well-meaning, loving advice and counsel of those that are around you,
Mhm.
that the more you can learn to trust your inner experience and your inner intuition, that will guide you where it needs to go. And it's not supposed to make sense. It won't make sense to you, much less anyone else that's in your circle.
Yeah.
And so to try to explain it to them and to try to get their buy-on and approval, I have found that to be a fool's errand, not worth the time to do it. And so I hope to try to tell the story in a way to give people more courage to trust their intuition, because when you look back, it'll all make sense. But in the moment, it's very difficult to kind of connect the dots.
Yeah, 100%. I really, really like that. And like intuition's one of those things where I never ever learned about intuition. No one really ever did. Well, I guess me growing up, me going through high school, at least in my household, intuition wasn't really talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And I think intuition's like one of the most powerful tools you can possibly go and harness if you can go and like learn to listen to it. And like I find that when I'm the least happy is when I'm the least in touch with my intuition. And
Mhm.
when I'm the most happy, I'm fully like, okay, screw logic. I'm intuitively doing this because
Right.
I know that it's what I should be doing. And I think it's like our way of connecting with the plan that God has for us in a
Mhm.
sense. So I'm super curious, man. Like I wanna go and I'll probably be texting you in 2 weeks and asking you to come back in after I go read your book, and I have a million questions about it, and I'm really excited about it. And I'm stoked to have met you in the first place. Like, so this book, it's going one direction, you have a full 180 pivot, and you're like, okay, rather than doing this that I'm familiar with that's boring and it feels like my journey in law, I'm gonna go pivot and do what scares me. And you started piecing things together, like I guess like the grace of God along the way and these little pieces that go and play in this part. What is the premise of the book? What's the book about? What's the message in the book? And how'd you get to the point of having that understanding?
The premise of the book, the question that I decided to ask myself, that I wanted to explore for myself, was how do you find your personal purpose? Castle said that quote of, when you truly want something, the universe will conspire for your good, which is a quote from The Alchemist. And The Alchemist is my favorite book. It's something that Castle and I have connected on. And so I've always had a very difficult time with that quote of the universe conspiring for your good, because I look at my life, I'm like, bullshit, the universe conspired for I fucking conspired for my good. And the
Yeah.
universe was an impediment to me doing my thing. The universe gave me a panic attack. The universe gave my wife cancer. The universe gave me twins when it was too overwhelming for us to do it because we were in the middle of a startup. So the universe conspiring for my good is bullshit as far as I'm concerned, because the universe impedes my good and then I have to go and do it, right? That was my starting thought. And so I felt like there was no way that that could be the right answer. And so I wanted to ask the question, if we're all meant to find our personal purpose, if we're wired to work and to live from purpose, what are the impediments to it? Why is it so difficult? How come I have gone from law to startups to being in a place where I feel not super called to start a business at this moment, to this? How come I have had a uniquely difficult time finding my personal purpose and going through all of these hoops? How can I look back at the experiences of my life and try to and things that I even had no control over? Like when I was a little kid, I had a speech impediment and I couldn't say my R's until I was in 6th grade. And so what is it about these things? How can I try to map these things and try to find a thread by which I can tie these experiences together in a way that is that that feels true to me? Um, and if I can make it make sense for me in a life that, if you look at anyone's life, you'll say, yes, I want all of those good things and none of those bad things. But maybe the bad things are more important than just the typical startup culture of the bad things must be overcome so that way we can experience these good things. And I think that, so I simply wanted to explore that question of, how do I find my purpose? How can I start seeing the universe conspiring for my good in these in these darker moments, we'll call them, that I would prefer not to have happen. And is that the universe conspiring for my good? And so I felt like I was at a time where all of everything that I had tried to build to create certainty in my life, my religious beliefs, the attempt to make as much money as possible. Those are all attempts to try to build certainty as best that you can, to that way you can have a predictable and linear up and to the right life as best as you can. All of those things, everything that I had worked for 32 years to try to build at that time, it had all been burned to the ground. And so with only the foundation bare, I thought, well, what else, what are the answers out there that what have other people come to, and a beautiful thing, like in Buddhism, there's this story of a woman that lost a child, and she goes to Buddha and says, can you bring my child back to life? And he says, yes, I can. All you have to do is go into the village and find one other person who's never lost someone that they love dearly, right? And if you can find one person who hasn't experienced loss, then I'll bring your child back to life, right? And she goes into the village and she can't find anyone. Everyone experiences loss. And it's these, and so that was a beautiful, life-giving story to me of this. I've experienced some loss in my life, and I feel somewhat victimized by those losses that I feel. But if I look at the wisdom traditions all across the world, the religions, they all have a teaching that tries to help you make meaning of the loss, not something that can help you avoid the loss. We all want to avoid the loss as much as we possibly can, but when you're in it, it is an unavoidable thing. And then the question is, how do I make meaning of it? And so in the book, I come up with a kind of a parable that that everyone goes through in order to find meaning of their life. And the gist of it is, we all begin our lives as camels on the default path. Camels are beasts of burden that have loads placed on them by their society and by the expectations. My first life as a camel was me wanting to practice law because it met my parents' expectations of what I should do with my life. And so a camel is on a default path that he didn't consciously choose, but he thinks that the default path is the only path that's available. It's the right path. It's the way that he can please those in his society. The camel has to find the courage to throw off the weight of the default path. And in that moment, he finds himself in a desert and he transforms into a lion. And the camel lives a life of submission. And the lion has to learn to find the courage to rebel against the expectations of others around him. Because if you're trying to find what it is that lights you up inside, what brings you life, oftentimes the exploration of that question will require you to disappoint those in your circle, right? And so the camel is incapable of making that decision. And so you have to go and you have to become a lion, and the lion lives in the desert. And so it's a very disorienting thing when I was having a panic attack as a lawyer and I was telling those around me, I can't do this. And they say, you must do this. I'm like, no, I'm saying I cannot do this. And they say, well, if you do this, we will be so disappointed in you. And so my decision that I had to come to was, do I let their disappointment guide me and their expectations guide me, or do I let my internal thing guide me, even though my internal thing is guiding me into the unknown, into this place that I have uncertainty around, right? That is the lion in the desert that has to learn how to rebel against those around him, and oftentimes even rebel against some of the things that he's been taught that he is convinced are his own kind of beliefs and values that are really installations from the environment. When the lion finds the courage to rebel, then there's space for curiosity to emerge, and that curiosity, something that the lion finds interesting, that can then lead the lion out of the desert into a garden and become a child. A lot of people live their entire lives in rebellion. I have entrepreneurial friends who've made a lot of money that still cannot wake up unless they feel like there are haters somewhere, right? They live their life in rebellion to an imaginary set of haters, and they feel like it's the fuel that they need in order to be successful. They never get to life as a child. So life as a child, the child is a creator, and children create for the joy of the creation and not for an expectation of what that creation can bring to them in their life. And when you create from that place, that is you creating from your heart, that then you can bring things into existence that are life-giving to you and life-giving to others as well. And you can make money in that place too. I'm not saying that we all need to watch Teletubbies or whatever children do these days,
Yeah.
but you can still make money from that place, but it's making money in a way that is life-giving as opposed to trading your life for a living, right? Making the living, and I will give up my life in order to do it. That's a fool's trade, I would say.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I've experienced that cycle multiple times in my life. And so I wanted to kind of map that out as an attempt for other people to feel like, if I'm called to entrepreneurship, or if I'm called on a path that those around me disagree with, maybe I'm not totally alone in that.
Mhm.
That is the essence of the journey that anyone who is successful. And so I have stories of Charles Darwin, Michael Jordan, Buddha, Jesus Christ, the guy who discovered penicillin, that we look at all of these things and you're like, oh, or Steve Jobs, the question of curiosity. Steve Jobs is the prime example that I use for that principle. He dropped out of school. He went to college to appease his foster parents, the people that adopted him. He knew that it was the wrong thing. He dropped out to their disappointment. And then he started taking calligraphy classes, not because he thought it was going to make him the most money, but just because he was interested in the beauty of calligraphy, the spacing between letters and that type of thing. 10 years later, when he's doing the Mac with Woz, he was adamant that he wanted calligraphy to be fonts. Steve Jobs created fonts in the computers because it came back to his calligraphy class. And that was one of the big aesthetic differences between a Mac and a Windows computer back in the 70s. And so that curiosity that he was driven to in his 20s, when he had the courage to rebel against his parents in some way, to just do his own thing, that came back, and that became one of the key things that he needed in order to have his mark on the world with the Mac computer. So all of those things, we look at the high moments and we want the high moments, and people talk from their high moments and say, here's my high moment, here's how you should get here. But we don't see the darker side of those things. And so I wanted to try to find, how does that inform the light side? And
Yeah.
how do those work in combination?
Dude, I love it. I'm like excited to read the book. Like, I'm like, this is sick. This is
That's
like
the point. That's the whole point.
Yeah, there you go. You're doing your job. There's one quote that, like, I was listening to a podcast with Matthew McConaughey, actually on my drive last night, because I drove up from the Vegas airport. That it sounds like the idea of what the book pivoted to kind of encompasses the quote, and it's: the beautiful tragedy of life is that we have to live it going forward, but it only makes sense looking back.
Yeah.
And like that, the book sounds like a perfect example of how you've looked back and you've gone and pieced together the things that in the moment you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, why is this happening? I feel like I'm doing everything right. Why would this happen right now? And like, again, Tony Robbins is my jam, right? So I apologize. And I'm
No.
fresh off a Tony Robbins kick, but it's like realizing that in some crazy way and being curious enough to be like, okay, maybe when things are really, really hard, it's impossible to say life's happening for me. For sure. It's like, it's damn near impossible. But if you can even be curious to the idea that maybe this is happening for me, not to me,
Mhm.
it's like a superpower. And it gives you like this, or it's given me in the past at least this willpower to get through it and get to the next
100%.
thing, and then also embrace what could be the good that comes out of it. So
And
I love it.
for me, the true essence, the hero's journey, the reason why the hero's journey and what I call the creator cycle is so important is because people don't understand the hero's journey. They think it's just, you get a call to adventure and then you go and you do a hard thing and then you come back with a gift. And in movies, the way that all of those things happen, the call to adventure, the slaying the dragon, those are all external events that, and for me, the call to adventure has always been, not Samuel L. Jackson tapping me on the shoulder at a diner with an eye patch saying, "Hey, you're actually the king of Asgard. Come home."
Yeah.
Right? That's the call to adventure that we all hope.
Yeah.
But the call to adventure is panic attack. You've picked the wrong thing. I'm not going to tell you what the right thing is, but you're in the wrong thing. Or you just made a bunch of money. That's amazing. Cancer, right? The call to adventure is chaos. It's the beginning of chaos, because when we're in a state of comfort, when we know who we are and what we're about and what our life is about, we tend to be closed off to new ideas, new opportunities, and new things. And then chaos, which most of us think of that word chaos as disruption or things that we don't understand that's happening in our life, disorganization. But what chaos really is, the root of chaos was the first god that existed in Greek mythology. Chaos was the goddess from which all of the other gods came. She is the mother of all of the other gods. In the Christian tradition, it says there is matter unorganized. The God Yahweh created the earth from disorganized matter, which in Greek that word is chaos.
Mm-hmm.
And so chaos is actually void, space, and unorganized matter. And so when we start to experience chaos in our life, we tend to label it as a bad thing, a thing that, and when it's bad, we have no curiosity around what that chaos is because it's bad. We don't want to look at it. It's not interesting to us,
Yep.
and especially a victim mentality of, I should not have had this panic attack. This cancer should not have happened, right? If you're labeling the uncontrollables in your life as things that should not otherwise have happened, then you have no curiosity around, what is this bringing me new that I wouldn't have otherwise been open to, and now that I am. And I get from that's all sounds all very high and mighty and very enlightened from the external, and it's not very difficult. It's much more difficult to say when your wife has terminal cancer and she may die in the next 18 months, or she may live for another 5 years. And you only become open to even the thing that I'm saying. I was only open to this when the old answers that I used to have no longer work anymore.
Yeah.
Right. And Christ says, what do you do with new wine? You cannot put new wine in an old bottle. And so I wanted to come up with a way that for someone who is questioning what their purpose is, they feel stuck in some way, or they feel like they don't know what the next move is. A lot of times the function of that stuckness is because a new event is happening in your life that you're trying to fit within this old bottle of your old programming, your old way of thinking. And if you have the courage to release that old way and be open to the new way, that is a process that you can come fuller into who you truly are and shed the older skin of who others expected you to be.
I love it, dude. I freaking love it. With that, I'm gonna leave everybody on a cliffhanger. We'll get you back. I'll get to the point where I read the book and I can jive with you and communicate. I mean, dude, I can tell there's so many things. There's so many questions I already have, so I'll just bank them up for when I force you to work your way back down to Provo and sit down. But dude, super, super nice to meet you. I appreciate the spur of the moment and jumping on. And I hope everybody goes and checks the book out, man, for real. I'm gonna go check it out. I'm actually excited to go check it out, which believe it or not, I've had people on, or I've met people, and like, I've wrote a book, and I meet people at these events. I'm like, cool. And there's few times where I'm excited to go read it. Sure. I usually do go read it out of respect. But I'm excited to go read it, man, for real. And you've got all my prayers, my best wishes for you, man. I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, dude.
And everybody for tuning in. Thank you guys as always, and much love until next time.
Until next one. Today's the day.
Today's the day.